Also think stablecoins really emphasizing that is the first RWA. It's like it's dollars on chain. So as tokenization happens, one, access to investable assets are important. Stablecoins, there's yield and earn opportunities. There's also holding value in dollars is really useful around the world. But I think access to different capital markets is going to be really important. Stablecoins will allow those flows to happen really well. It's also going to show people, okay, we can build real capital markets, institutional level type of rails on what stablecoins have already built.
Season 7 of Stableminded is powered by Brale. With Brale, you can launch stablecoins in just minutes, and most importantly, actually make them usable. They have a single API that unifies licensing, custody, on-ramps, and off-ramps. Brale is the stablecoin issuer for emerging ecosystems like Canton and Lightspark, and they also provide core infra for payments and embedded finance teams like CoinFlow, Rain, Flashnet, and hundreds of others. This season is all about stablecoins for everyone. Learn more at brale.xyz.
All right, we are here with Jeff Milewski, founder, CEO of SBC, all about stablecoins. I'm so excited to dive into this company, hear the progress that you guys have been just building this for. It's been almost a year and a half now. Give us the quick high level intro on what you're building. We can start really high and then dive deeper. But yeah, Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. Yeah, it's great seeing stuff like this, content like this be put out there. So, honored to be part of your show here.
When you have the domain stablecoin.xyz, I feel like we're really late to covering you. I feel like we were joking before. Brale having the season with them was one of the early goals of us doing the show to begin with. We've loved seeing what Brale has built and the different partners and people around this ecosystem that they've attracted to join them in this journey of just building and issuing stablecoins in all these different ways and go-to-market approaches. So yeah, man, I'm excited to dive into this today. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, with Brale, and I think about a year and a half ago, it was when we started, we spun out of Brale as a separate entity. And a lot of it was, the ecosystem that Brale was building with issuing stablecoins. There was this need, like, how do we build tooling and get people ramped up in different ecosystems with the right infrastructure, different development tools. And so we really thought, like, let's have a separate entity here, build a team just around like tooling and enabling stablecoin use cases, especially around what we're seeing a lot of is like a lot of bespoke stablecoins are coming out, a lot of issuing of your own stablecoins for your own platforms, own applications. So we're really looking forward to this, like, keep on building the tooling and kind of enabling people to build the stables.
Yeah. What does it mean that you spun out of Brale? Like, give us the story of like how you met Ben, what that means, what you maybe started with, what you thought would happen versus what did happen. Like, give us a little bit of the background of like how this spin out even happened or what the story is there.
Yeah, absolutely. So SBC as a stablecoin was like their test stablecoin on the platform when they first launched Brale. And it was never meant to be like an external stablecoin that had its own like company behind it, but it was getting some usage. It was, kind of an asset on the platform in its own ecosystem, and seeing other people create stablecoins and seeing the need around like, well, they probably need this tooling or this type of solution as like an open source project. Brale was focused on like issuing. So they didn't have like the bandwidth or wanted to build teams specifically around some of those things. So it's like, let's spin out SBC, the stablecoin, into its own entity, and we can build tooling around that can be leveraged by other stables, other ecosystems, those type of things. So it was much more like, let's make sure this is a focused company outside of issuance. And that gives us more flexibility, like what can we build? What are people and clients asking for? What are ecosystems needing? All those things. And we can be much more flexible in terms of like, we don't have to worry about issuance, regulatory stuff. We can be like, let's just build for developers and see where we go. So it's been pretty fun. It's been open-minded, open kind of roadmap so far. A lot of exploration, but it's kind of like the timing of building with stablecoins. It couldn't be more perfect in that sense.
Yeah. So SBC, it sounds like, was this native, really first and primary stablecoin that Brale, the infrastructure of stablecoin issuance, was starting with. It was kind of like the test or default stablecoin. When you came into Brale or when you were working with Ben and team, what did you know in your mind, like, hey, there's going to need to be tooling and infrastructure around this asset, and this is a perfect way to go test and learn like what tools need to be built? Or was that something that you kind of along the journey realized, like, based on the usage or like developers you were talking to, you kind of had the light bulb moment while you were there? What was that like?
Well, it was because we used Brale. So this is in my previous startup. It was Glo Dollar, which was like a
Yep.
nonprofit, I would say like a stable coin that generated revenue to be passed on to public goods and kind of nonprofit use cases. And we were like a very early stable coin on Brale's platform with Glo. And trying to bring that to market, this is, 3 or 4 years ago now when we started that stuff, and like we were early on when Brale was launching. But that was like I kind of felt the challenges of like, okay, I'm launching my own stablecoin. How do I create utility with it? How do I find use cases? How do I grow market cap? How do I work with different DeFi protocols and liquidity, all those things? And we just didn't have the expertise or the team to do that as like a stablecoin in like entering a market. And so I was like, okay, if the tooling was here and we could just leverage it from another partner, that would be the ideal thing. So I felt the need with Glo Dollar, and I was like, from that point, it's like, okay, let's create this entity spinning out of Brale to focus on all those needs that a lot of different bespoke and custom stablecoins can leverage. So yeah, it's kind of like this feeling it, like it's hard. There's not going to be network effects right away, or there's not going to be great utility right away, or there's not going to be this angle of like, oh, I approach an ecosystem and I want to be part of it. How do I bring value to it? And hopefully some of our tooling can let people and developers really add value early on.
So, you spin out. I remember this day. I remember when I got this email from Ben and this moment happened. I think I reached out to him actually that moment or that day. I was like, I need to meet this guy. I want to talk to him and see what he's thinking through. So much has happened since then. Maybe if we, before we skip to how you're thinking about things today and tomorrow and what you're building, bring us back to that moment when that spin out happened a year and a half ago or so. Describe SBC high level and what it is and what it's for. And then I'd love to know like really the journey of how you started a year and a half ago and what you've chosen to prioritize in that time, like the partnerships, which tools you've actually built, which ones have worked or not worked. Like bring us back to that moment and give us a high level of what SBC is first as well.
Yeah, absolutely. SBC, that's like the ticker for the stablecoin itself. It's Brale issued stablecoin, US regulated. So I want to make sure people know it's just a trusted stablecoin in the ecosystem. And the initial kind of path, we were like, okay, account abstraction, removing friction, the friction of crypto, seamless payments, like let's make this like a payment stablecoin focus, led us to a place where we're like, okay, let's explore paymasters, let's explore getting rid of gas fees. Let's see how we can just get normal people using stablecoins, as payment methods. And that was the beginning of it. So we were like digging into the whole 4337, account abstraction frameworks, all those things. We built a Paymaster. We built some tooling around swaps and mass pay as experimentations, and kind of brought those early things to different developers and users to be like, hey, like if you want to build something gasless, we've kind of built an expertise around this. Let us help you implement some of these things. So that was like a 2024 growth trajectory in terms of like the ecosystem. How do we make payments and stablecoins much easier? And then we moved into more, okay, like, let's look at ecosystems and what their needs are, and how do you grow an early ecosystem, and what kind of tooling do you need to bring developers to it? We can go to more details there, but there's a lot more than just removing gas. That's kind of been solved. How do we get people actually like scaling up on the payments landscape there?
Yeah. And what have you, this is what I was going to ask before, based on what have you learned not to be true, or what were some learnings or hypotheses that you had originally that in the early part of this journey when you were starting to go out, you were like, okay, we really need to focus on this or build this or do this. What have you realized actually maybe isn't a good idea, or we shouldn't go down that path, or this isn't working, versus maybe things that are, you have realized are like really strategic things to go build, or things that the ecosystem really needs around SBC?
Yeah, I would say like, there's a lot of focus on like chasing market cap with stablecoins, and that's not something we focused on. Or like it's like there's a business model around like market cap, obviously, but a lot of that's like incentive driven. All those things are just like temporary rewards. And we're just a small team, and we're just trying to build value for like developer communities. So if we focus too much on that, we're not going to create enough value like where we're at in terms of helping ecosystems and different stables. So that was one thing. Like I probably spent too much time like, how do we figure out the network effects path, rather than just starting with let's just 100% think about tooling, solving the problems. We're more like, let's just make sure SBC or somebody else's stablecoin has the flows that are necessary. The volume's going to increase and be useful. It might not always result in market cap growth, but it's something that we're actually solving a problem around. So that's kind of like the framing we really want to focus on. And that's, a lot of the conversations around like, if there's going to be a whole bunch of different types of stablecoins, what are the useful things to build? And that's what we're exploring now. It's like interoperability. Like we have a layer 0 integration that we're kind of building on top of. There's the whole idea of like on and off ramps, making sure those are seamless. And Brale's doing a really good job of like building out some of those capabilities we can leverage and build tooling around all those things. So it's definitely, we want to be dev focused and tooling and like ecosystem focused too.
Yeah. How are you guys measuring, as an issuer, as a stablecoin on the asset level, the more that these things get issued, get held as the network grows, there's obviously like really meaningful economics there that can happen if balances reside in that asset. How have you, as a builder, as a founder of this thing, thought through the commercial strategy of how to make money, how to build long-term value, if that, not that it sounds like that's not the focus, but short-term, like, there's a big difference between creating something, to your point, that's valuable, utilized, being transferred around versus something that you can just find someone with a big pockets to go issue a lot of these things and they sit there and they don't get used at all. But if you look at the TVL map, like, whoa, it raises eyebrows, It's like, that's actually not that exciting for developers. How are you thinking about more of the short, middle term commercial model of keeping the lights on and monetizing things in the early days with this?
Absolutely. So market cap will still be like a driver of like, the business model. And I think of like our growth is going to come from supporting ecosystems, especially new ones, where like getting a stablecoin, like a native stablecoin and a team helping you build those capabilities is really useful to early ecosystems. And those partnerships might include some type of commercials, but like just like the early growth there is a significant opportunity for us to grow. Or they launch their own stable and we help that grow as well. So when I think of like if we're supporting just the stablecoin ecosystems, if we're like supporting liquidity or just like payment flows, we'll get growth of the stablecoin through that as well. And we're starting to see that quite a bit. Like Brale has this ecosystem that's already kind of built around the ones issued on their platform that SBC is always a part of because we're like the first stablecoin on any chain that's supported there.
Yeah.
And that's,
let's
we
dive
want that
into
organic growth. Yeah.
Let's dive into this new ecosystems thing. So maybe give some examples of what some new ecosystems might be that you either personally are excited about or are actively working with, and then maybe what you've learned or needs of those ecosystems in ways that SBC is delivering value to help them grow faster or grow more effectively as they build that ecosystem. Maybe some examples there would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a couple to highlight kind of on the more recent side we're working with is the Canton Network, which is a pretty unique ecosystem. It's, privacy preserving, very like institutional focused, not your typical like EVM blockchain. So there's a lot of development and like kind of its own way of implementing it technically. It's been a challenge, but it's pretty interesting. We were like the first stablecoin on that network. So when applications started building and like, they're like, okay, who's going to be our partner to like test things out, build the early swaps and DeFi type of products. And we were right there helping that out and making sure SBC was supported. And then you look at like, how does Brale get incorporated in the ecosystem here too? It's like, they act as this like business account on and off ramp in a sense where you're enabling a private stablecoin transaction for treasuries, B2B payments. You could have on and off ramps with USDC or USD, but it can be done through like a Canton SBC flow, which is pretty interesting on the privacy side. I know privacy is starting to pick up, but I think Canton is in a pretty good position to really kind of build those relationships. Yeah, I'll pause there, but that's kind of the Canton side. We have a list of, partners we're having fun with in terms of like, let's get SBC supported. Let's help with some liquidity. Let's do some testing. That's all been a really kind of interesting, lots of learning about how does the Canton network work and how we can kind of bring stuff there. But we're seeing good growth on Canton and it's exciting.
So it sounds like you've been in Canton since the beginning, or just like you've been really deep in that ecosystem. I know Brale has a ton of just meaningful, impactful work going on around that ecosystem. For those who may not be familiar with that blockchain, what they're doing, why it's so impactful, maybe just give a little bit of a, why you're excited about that, given the context of what they're building and how unique it is. But in my mind, also how it's kind of a forward indicator of like what other ecosystems could look like and the priorities of the next 5 to 10 years of institutional capital, stuff like that could be cool. And also maybe what SBC, like where that asset is finding its home in that ecosystem, the types of like, learnings that you've had in the last, I guess, year as you've integrated it, stuff like that would be great.
Yeah, I'll expand on a lot of this stuff. So Canton, we have been pretty early Brale was like an early application on the network as well. For ourselves, it was mostly like, the mainnet launched, I think, at the beginning of this year. And that's when like a lot of app developers and people started getting interested in like, how do we start to participate in this network? And since we were already in the network as the stablecoin and we were kind of familiar with how it worked, we were a resource in terms of like, okay, let's get this on our application. Let's start working with it. Let's start doing some testing. So that was just kind of like our introduction to it. Over time, we've seen some of the incentives that the network has built, like the protocol level incentives. A lot of it's app rewards. So it's like it actually rewards people building and creating transactions and creating utility on the network relative to like what you see with a lot of pre-mine type of networks that get launched or a lot of VC investment. This is all pretty fair in terms of rewarding actual creation and development on the network. So we really liked that and thought that was a really good model. Get people excited about it.
So just to be super clear on what that means. So if Brale, SBC, Defense, these other, I think the Thai, it's the Thai. They have a really good relationship with Canton. They have maybe when we clip this, we can pull it up, but it's a really cool breakdown of like their early ecosystem partners that are getting these rewards and the data around that. Really cool work by them. So you're saying as the utility, the usage, the payment volume is attributed or happening, the Canton coin or the reward mechanism will flow to the builders or the developers who are attributed for that flow. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like very much like if you're creating utility on the network, we reward you for that utility. And it's less about like farming or like just getting in early. It's more about, okay, how do you build sustainable applications that, provide the, value for the ecosystem. Yeah.
And that could be really meaningful revenue. Like if you guys are actually, you think about traditional payments that are being processed, like it's a really interesting paradigm. It's kind of it's pretty new to see that happening where the actual developers, I mean, are we seeing this anywhere else in culture, maybe historically? Like maybe I'm thinking about like in the early settlement days of America, like the government kind of giving plots of land to people and saying like, go build meaningful things there. It's kind of like a similar thing. Go build economies, go, create tax revenues for the states. It's similar to that, I guess, but it's really unique.
Yeah. And it's also, I just look at like, how do you create a fair network? And it's a nice incentive mechanism to like really get people involved early on. Because a lot of things launch and just might have some short-term incentive, but it doesn't like sustain. So I think Canton is doing it the right way. And there's not like a big pre-mine that's sitting out there waiting to be monetized. But there's also like with Canton too, like the technical side, I think that's important to have a like incentive mechanism like that because it's not your like Solidity EVM setup. There is a lift to like invest in like the programming language behind it, the way it's set up, the synchronization model. And I don't know all the details, like just in the conversation, but it's a unique way that they're implementing a blockchain network. It's like almost a network of networks to where you have to like really invest in the network to understand and be an expert. And it has this institutional kind of angle because like there's some, overlap of what institutions are used to there. And there's also the configurability. You can configure your own network for your own privacy, what kind of data you're sharing, all that stuff. And that adds complexity, but it's a very unique in terms of creating value for the privacy preserving type of ecosystems.
So where are you at with maybe Canton or these other emerging ecosystems in terms of like the build, integration, volume that's going through there? What are you seeing from a use case standpoint that might be driving SBC volume on these chains? Like, are you able to kind of get that level of clarity yet based on where you guys are at volume wise?
So a little bit. So a lot of like right now, things are still coming in terms of applications. Like we are integrated with several like wallets. I call them swaps. Like there's like AMMs that are coming on board. Like Trade.fast is one. There's Braun Wallet has a swap feature. Temple is building like an order book on Canton, which is going to have SBC support. All those things are going to be wrapping up as the network is maturing with some upgrades. At the same time, there are experiments. There's been some announcements around like the repo markets experimenting with Canton, and SBC has been in those flows. And, we're talking about millions of dollars of flows here that we're seeing testing with, especially around the Brale ecosystem and those connections. So yeah, we're excited about what the potential is as like larger institutions come in and SBC is just available through like these workflows and what's possible. So yeah, it's all kind of coming in that sense. And I just kind of like, that's our strategy. It's like, if we're helping out an early ecosystem and a network, building with like the early app developers, our growth is going to be organic in the sense of like, we're just already there before, you know, we'll support other stables on there too. Like if you want to have a liquidity pool, we're looking at creating our own LP fund to like get small pools set up for RWA tokens, and like USDCX is on Canton now. We'll support those flows as well. So it's all kind of early ecosystem, just figuring out where needs are and helping solve problems.
It's really cool. It seems like from a focus standpoint, this sort of early being in the trenches with those ecosystems and doing that work to service them and help them grow I can just imagine that they won't forget that as they hopefully won't forget that as they think through the longer term decisions around where to route flow, who to work with strategically. It's a really interesting approach you guys are taking to service those ecosystems early and hopefully stay sticky with them as they grow. I think that's really interesting. Yeah. Any other ecosystems like Canton or any other ones to call out that come to mind that are like interesting ones for you guys?
Yeah, the other one we're working really close with right now is Radius. So Radius, the team behind it, really impressive. Out of MIT, some people from Circle, some people from the Federal Reserve out of Boston that were doing like early CBDC stuff, which is interesting because I used to teach some of their content from the Federal Reserve. So it's full circle working with them. But we're like the technology partner getting their network ready for like stablecoin integration. And Radius is all about high throughput, super low cost, and it's EVM compatible, but it's built in a way where it's much, much more scalable than like the traditional EVM L2 models. And we're talking about it has to be scalable. Like this is like the Cloudflare level of transaction volumes. Radius will be so cheap that agents can use it for payments. We'll be building a lot up with the X402 protocol, and we're bringing our like toolkit around like for developers, whether it's like paymasters, and we have an AppKit, we have some wallet stuff. All those things are part of like our technology package to help Radius when they launch.
It's really cool. Ben seems really excited about this team. What do you think is like based on, and actually we're, I believe going to interview someone from their team, hopefully this season as well. So we'll dive more into Radius, and I believe Canton as well. I guess, when you think about making this about you guys, when you think about the ecosystems that you could go work with the options are very abundant right now for where you and your team are going to go build and who you're going to partner with and do the work that is really technical, in-depth, custom, bespoke. Like this is a very valuable decision on who you spend time with. How do you as a asset, as a stablecoin partner, think through who you want to be partnering with also from your side? Like what do you look for about Radius or Canton that makes you excited or committed or bullish on working with them specifically versus others or alternatives in the markets? It sounds like their team is extremely like experienced on where they come from and how they see the world, but would love to know more about that.
Yeah, so strategically, it's kind of like, where do we allocate our time within the ecosystem landscape? And right now, privacy is one of the kind of hot topics of like what the potential growth trajectory of crypto can be. So that's default for Canton. And there's other ones like Miden that are launching that I'm excited about and want to have a conversation with at some point. But yeah, I get excited about the privacy angle just because it's like it's another feature of crypto that needs to be fleshed out, and having a stable coin partner would be, I think, pretty useful there. And then with Radius, I look at they're bringing a differentiated product here. It's a network that has that highly scalable, huge bandwidth for payments, and it's the actual network that seems like might be the only one that can do like truly AI agent payments at scale. And that's really important in terms of like, okay, they figured out a technical implementation. We'd love to be part of that story. And we're starting to see other people do that too. And I think that's going to be just X402 is an interesting protocol to build on top of and see what we can do with a Radius type of network. Yeah. And I think the teams too, making sure they're one, people we don't work with. And two, it's like they have a reputation around they're building for the long term. Like that's really important. We're not like in a world where like we have a token associated with our company that we want to just like get liquidity and get rich quick. Like we're just traditional startup equity, bit of pre-seed, going to do a seed type of process. You can tell with other networks, like it's like, okay, are they just going to like launch a token and like who knows where the network's going to go? Radius, they're just building, like they don't have a token in that sense. And so, like this is a long-term technology solution and very focused on like, let's get some enterprises in here and build some technology that works. So I really like that. That's just kind of like my long-term mindset. I'm much more of a, value investor in terms of how I think about partnerships.
Yeah. Yeah. You've taken I like the approach you've taken is really that of like, let's go build tooling. Let's go, and we can maybe talk about some of the specific parts of the toolkit with Paymaster, wallet. You mentioned X402, stuff like that. Maybe we can get into more of that. But just the approach of SBC is not just the asset, but the tools around it that come with it or integrate really beautifully with it to make that asset come to life. Spectrum. Like on one side, they don't want to do anything. They don't want to lift a finger. They don't have in-house engineers or anyone who, is familiar with building on this stuff. So being able to, use things almost out of the box, if you will, is what they want. On the other side of the spectrum, it's like they want to build everything from scratch, completely bare metal. They want to see everything from zero. Where do you guys see SBC falling, or in the toolkits you're building, like falling on that enterprise spectrum? Is that even the right way to think about it? And maybe we can start diving into some of these specific features.
Yeah, I would say like enterprise, that's more the focus of the ecosystem. They're like Radius, Canton, like institutional enterprise stuff could be very useful there. We'll more focus on how do we enable the use cases on the network. So the tooling that helps builders, work with stablecoins, integrate stablecoins, those type of things. So it could be it doesn't have to be like, we don't have to think about enterprise specific things versus like, a startup doing something on themselves. I think we can be pretty flexible there. But yeah, I hear you in terms of like, they are different types of customers. If there is some opportunity where like a bigger enterprise partner needed something specific that's, they're working with a network we're supporting, I'd be happy to explore how we can, do something for them. But I kind of want to be this friendly stablecoin, open source projects, developer community focused at our current stage in that sense.
Yeah. So you're saying if I wanted to, go build my background personally is in like merchant payments at Square and learning payments from that lens. So I'm always thinking about it this way. But if I wanted to go build the PSP on chain, or just build payments that interoperate with cards or checkout stuff, I could essentially, whether I know it or not, I could be using this toolkit. Maybe I'm wanting to build this on Canton or Radius. Maybe I want some sort of like X402 agentic checkout thing, and that's why I choose to do it. I could go to either myself, maybe I am the like Stripe equivalent of this, where I'm building those tools. Are you, I guess, more so selling to the, maybe we're not even at that point of maturity yet, where like that layer is even there, where you're almost reselling or redistributing that stuff? I guess what I'm asking is who specifically do you find is the quote customer of who is paying for developing on top of this? Is it more of the end enterprise, or is it more of those who are selling to that group, if you will?
Yeah, it's more the ecosystem is like the end customer, or like another stable coin that we're just supporting in the ecosystem. It's not like a direct customer in that sense, but we're helping those ecosystems grow in a sense. So like with Radius, we're a partner there. They're in effect the customer, and we're providing like a technology layer that's helping that network create more utility and getting their mainnet ready to roll in terms of, when people come to it to use it, developers come to it to build on it, we'll have a tool set that's available for them to use. And when I talk about the tool set, like we're like, there's a lot of things. We have a small team right now. We're going to be expanding that, building a layer that's more like, well, I can just go direct to like an enterprise customer and they just like pick something out and use it. That's all coming. Right now, it's like very like, okay, go to our repo. We have an AppKit that has like pre-configured Paymaster for like gasless transactions, pre-configured like wallet infrastructure providers. We can pre-configure the network we're working with, like pre-configure with Radius. All those things are like, okay, I'm a developer. I need to build this. I'll just get the AppKit. Everything's ready to go. I don't have to think about Paymaster integrations because that's a huge lift for someone to just jumping into stuff. So those type of solutions, hopefully over time, they're like even more seamless, but it's helping people get into it, the network and build. So yeah, and then, sorry.
Do you even see the asset, the stablecoin itself, like SBC? I'm curious if you think about it this way, like for these early ecosystems or partners that you're selling to, there are a lot of things that they need structurally to make this ecosystem come to life and to make volume happen and to service transactions at scale. Are you seeing, and maybe just philosophically as you think about the business and how you're wanting to grow it, the asset itself almost being another tool, being another thing that you can kind of just bring out of the box, almost like how Brale used it in the early days, and then if that sticks and they want to continue using it primarily, great, but it actually is not necessarily the focus. It's more of just like thinking of it as a tool, modular in a modular sense. Is that how you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So SBC is an asset we bring to ecosystems. It's a native stablecoin, US regulated in the Brale ecosystem. So like the platform Brale is really great for business on and off ramp, business account type stuff. So that's a valuable thing to bring. And you think like we're nimble enough, small enough to work really closely with a new ecosystem and network. Maybe like the bigger ones, like a Circle, it's a little longer lead time. But yeah, that's an important aspect of it. And it's part of that too is like with Radius, like SBC will be that main stablecoin that people need to have to like use the network, convert it into like a gas token that lets people build on top of it. So it's pretty functional in terms of getting people into something like that. Yeah, and some people in ecosystems want to like launch their own stablecoin, and I look at like Spark is really interesting coming from the Bitcoin ecosystem. They launched the USDB, like their Spark stablecoin. SBC was still one of the first stablecoins on Spark because of the Brale support there, and we're happy to support liquidity and tooling around that as well in the future. So it's kind of, there's multiple ways we think about it, but yeah, it's definitely fun to think about how we just are part of this ecosystem and not really competing with people. We're just helping support where they want to see growth.
Yeah, you're giving choice in a lot of different areas, which is cool. Any other call outs on this toolkit with the specific parts of the toolkit deserving of a shout out or deserving of a highlight that SBC is bringing to the table here outside of just the asset itself? It sounds like you guys have a really robust toolkit around it.
Yeah, and it's like, so the AppKit kind of like encompasses some of the account abstraction gas fee stuff, which is really great. We work with some infra providers that are fun to work with too, and like making sure that's something that's accessible. On the X402, well, a couple things. So we are working on some open source wallet stuff. So if you're an ecosystem and like, hey, I want people to start using this for payments, we'll have like a pre-configured wallet that you just plug in, make sure it's working. So that'll be coming. And then X402 facilitator products, that's basically like verifying whether payments have gone through on the blockchain to make sure the 402 request is met. We are going to provide that as a service, both as like a local open source facilitator for developers to use in their own testing. At the same time, just offer it as a facilitator option and support, new ecosystems that don't have like the big facilitators that are coming out, or the Coinbase one. So that's all exciting to me in terms of like potential growth. I think there's going to be a lot of more growth with X402 and that path.
Yeah. Why do you say that? I feel like X402 has been a kind of an interesting buzz the last quarter. Like this Q4, like the Q4 buzz in my mind is like X402 in the world of payments and agentic commerce and all this stuff. Like, why do you believe that this is, what makes you bullish enough on this to go build and architect the product around it? Do you think it's overhyped, or do you actually think that this is something that's going to last and you're starting to see significant reasons why that you hold that belief?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the hype is warranted in a sense if you have a long-term mindset. I think, you see the early growth and like a lot of people jumping into like, oh, I want to support the protocol and build around it. Flare and like Coinbase originally kind of started this whole trend. But what I see is like, we're going to see a shift in business models. And it's like right now everything is like ad driven, and a lot of, we're just trying to like, it's the attention and like clicks that have really kind of monetized a lot of internet traffic. And with X402 and monetizing all the goods and services that are digital in a much more direct way, basically microtransactions, where like a Radius network actually enables it with stablecoins, I think that's just a better, more sustainable business model and something that adds value to the consumer. And if that's ultimately more valuable than like the ad type of model, over the long run, I think you're going to see it replaced. And that's going to be how we monetize consuming information, getting premium API data, just interactions with any type of content, those type of things. So yeah, I don't have like specifics here, but I do think if there is a more valuable business model and it's more valuable to the end user, it's going to happen. And I think X402 is a great kind of initiator of it. And Google knows this. Google's building in this space too. And that's a really good indication. They're like, oh yeah, we understand our ad model isn't as good. So let's start exploring the agentic kind of X402.
Yeah. As a media business ourselves, I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, how do we, when and how should we start getting more convicted around our own IP and the content that we are creating and really owning. Like the insights, for example, from this episode, that is like proprietary knowledge that our company will be able to bring to the world. But it's like the balance of like, okay, I could just go, download this transcript, put it into an LLM, or get this information for free so easily. I think there's, for X402 in my mind, to really work for a media business, I'm curious your thoughts, or like a content business, the IP itself has to be so protected or clear where it's not, you can't just go and get it so easily, so that that transaction and gating can actually happen. Maybe I'm thinking about that incorrectly, but I'd love your perspective. Selfishly, I'm asking this for you, knowing what you know with payments in X402 and what's possible, how even you would, like for us, if we wanted to go roll out like, learn to earn content, or even just like issue the insights from our episodes or from our library of media on this protocol or in this way. Do you think that that's actually like, are we way too early to do something like that? How do you think through that?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in all these things, but the way I would think about it, you would want to gate it to some extent. And this is where the 402 protocol works well. It's like, if I'm an LLM trying to like consume your new, I don't know, podcast or transcript, whatever it is, and it does have some type of gating, and all it needs is a quick payment request, and it's done automatically. That's a pretty seamless option for the LLM provider. So I think, yeah, short answer, yes, gating, plus also seamless access to it, which would be
Is the simple way to look at it is like, let's just say we have some really you bring on this episode some extremely interesting qualitative insight about SBC or Radius or Canton or whatever, and that someone across the world is asking about Radius to their LLM, and we have been able to identify that we actually have the best answer for that because we just had this conversation and you just provided the most up-to-date relevant insight about the team at Radius, for example. Is the simple flow like that would be communicated to the protocol itself? Like we would X402, the protocol would know the insight, and then we would determine how much we are asking the toll booth price for that insight. So they would be able to adequately broker it. And maybe even SBC as the asset could be used to like, do that transaction in a micro sense. Am I thinking about it the right way?
Yeah, well, you're thinking it on a level a little more deeper than I was thinking about it. But you're saying like, how do we create the correct value or price for the insight? And that's why there'd have to be a layer in between just the payment request, the 402 payment request, and the payment. There'd have to be like a layer that says like, okay, we have this insight, some type of, I don't know, agent or LLM analyzes, yes, this insight is valuable, but to actually use it on an end user level, that's where you make the payment. So it's maybe like an IP type of payment rather than like access payment. It's like, okay, we know this insight's important. I want to give this to my end user as the LLM, and then we can seamlessly make the transaction happen if they choose to take that information. That's me that's like riffing off the top of my head. But yeah, I think pricing it is a pretty interesting economic problem. I have like my background is economics, so this is probably something I'm going to think about the next 2 weeks or so.
It is hard. It's hard because like you can, knowledge is in some. Think about you went to college, you paid a lot of money for that economics degree, but like the university was in the position to price the value of that degree to you in this model and in this format because they, in some ways, curated the IP and curated the knowledge in a way that was valuable enough for you to go pay them. But now in this like everything's everywhere internet economy where, the lawsuits haven't finalized yet with all these big LLM companies, like we're just in the wild west of information and you can kind of get everything you need in a pretty available way. It's kind of an interesting moment for a media company, I would say, to figure out like how to do what the university model is in a way.
Right. Yeah. And like brands and kind of reputation is built over time and pricing kind of built around that as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I do definitely think like, if we're going to make this a seamless transaction, the X402 / stablecoin integration is going to be big on that side. Yeah. But let me know, like if you're thinking through some of this stuff, I would be happy to just like riff on how does pricing work and like, is there a protocol that needs to be built around it? And obviously we want to focus on like the actual transactions with stablecoins, but always fun to think about different models.
It just seems like we should be doing this as a stablecoin focused media company. Like if anyone's going to go do something like this or innovate in this area, it should be us because we're actually covering the economy around this stuff very deeply. I just also don't think that, like to your point, I don't think advertising is going to be the business model that wins long term. And it's like actually the most strategically mutually aligned business model. Like people hate advertising, and we try to be really thoughtful around how we do it at our company. But I struggle to believe that that's the right business model in the future as we innovate around some of these conversations. I think that the value of giving information and connecting the dots and bringing, like, having someone ask a question, in my mind, it's like someone across the world in Hong Kong is building something on Canton. They're asking a question. Maybe they ask it to us. We actually can objectively say, based on the knowledge that we've gathered from Jeff in the conversation we had back in December, you should go talk to Jeff. And then we can like actually make that connection. You guys end up working with them. Like we can, you can thank us in some commercial way in a minor sense for that introduction. That in my mind is more of an interesting business model than advertising, podcasts, stuff like that. But this podcast is about you. I'm making it about me.
No, it's fine. I think these are the future in terms of what's possible. And I always look to like, what is crypto, stablecoins, what is it actually enabling? And is it a better future? And that's what motivates me. It's like, let's focus on those things. And a lot of it's like, I love stablecoins just because like the access, like global access and inclusion and all that stuff. I just think if we can monetize all these digital goods and services in better ways, it's going to be better for the whole economic system in that sense.
What do you think, just from your vantage point, building in stablecoins, doing this company, what do you think are the kind of structural shifts or like macro business model changes that maybe we have even yet to see due to agentic stablecoin based payments, or just what this technology provides? I feel like we're still in this like update the old rails with this new stuff, but actually like reimagining, kind of what you're getting at is like reimagining what's possible or reimagining new systems completely from scratch. Or there is anything coming to mind or stuff that you're thinking about economically, or that you think things like stablecoins enable that we haven't even really scratched the surface of yet? Big question as we close.
Yeah, it's fine. But so, the global aspect of like inclusion into a digital economy is really important. We're used to having like infrastructure and, we can walk down the street and sign up for a bank account. The rest of the world, a lot of the world cannot do that. So like, that's really important. Always to remember stablecoins enable this inclusion into a very much trusted financial ecosystem. And then where the future is going, we talked a whole bunch about X402 and like those microtransactions and like enabling those business models. I also think stablecoins really kind of like emphasizing that is the first RWA. It's like it's dollars on chain. So as tokenization happens, one, access to investable assets are important. Stablecoins, there's yield and earn opportunities. There's also like just holding value in dollars is really kind of useful around the world. But I think access to different capital markets is going to be really important. And stablecoins will allow those flows to happen really well. But it's also going to show people like, okay, we can build real capital markets and those, like the institutional level type of rails on what stablecoins have already built. I know that's kind of high level and not really specific, but that is a trend I think I'm pretty bullish on. And we're starting to see it. Like, Canton I talked about, but like, people are doing base experiments. There's Solana stuff with institutions. All those things are coming. And I think stablecoins will be the flowing kind of like liquidity layer there.
Yeah. How do you think, it's just as we're closing 2025 out here, 2026, any predictions for the new year or things thematically that will start to emerge based on what you're seeing that we haven't touched on?
Okay. Well, yeah, I already touched on the privacy stuff.
You think privacy chains, Canton, things like this are going to continue to explode?
See, I think, explode might be aggressive. I think they'll keep growing in terms of like interest and usefulness. But like the key thing with privacy, it's like it's institutionally compliant. Not like the privacy, I'm like, I don't want anybody knowing my sketchy transactions. It's like, this is part of traditional institutional flows that are compliant with the regulatory landscape. That's what I'm most bullish on, because that's how we get the rest of traditional finance interacting with us. And that's really important. But yeah, more themes. I haven't really thought about it that much. I do think back to tokenization, but like, I do like the idea of more access to not really yield, but like investable assets on chain that are more broadly accessible. And we kind of see this with like, the private credit markets, IPOs that aren't IPOs yet, but they're bought in the private level. That stuff on chain, kind of powered by the stablecoin layers, is something I want to see more of in 2026.
It's really cool. Any new customer segments or as you guys are thinking through new ecosystems or ones that you may not be working with yet that might be on your horizon or kind of wish list for the new year, those that you would love to, consider working with more closely?
Yeah, so things I haven't really put a lot of time into yet, but prediction markets are interesting, especially if they're built on stablecoins. And the default has always been like, okay, USDC is just the trusted stablecoin. Let's build on top of that. I do want to see like if it's a bespoke one, or if like we can build some integrations utilizing SBC. If people are wanting to build more and more prediction market type of products, I would love to like be in those conversations.
Do you think prediction markets are a good use case for SBC from like the toolkit standpoint? Because you think about an ecosystem, like does that strike you as a similar flavor to an ecosystem, like a prediction market
So
platform? Or
I would say networks are like more like the ecosystem where I'm like really spending most of the time. If someone wants to build like a prediction market on top of like a Radius or Canton, that's where I'd be like, let's see how we can leverage SBC as the stable coin there, or we can help you with like your own bespoke stable coin on your own prediction market with some of our tooling.
Yeah.
But that, like those apps are going to keep growing because like the volumes are crazy.
I don't actually know of any ecosystems that are positioning themselves specifically to the developers who might be wanting to go build the prediction market use cases. I don't know of any.
Yeah, I don't know any specifics. I just know that, we saw like the perps with Hyperliquid, like that was like an ecosystem specifically for that use case.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Seems
I
like
don't,
green space. Like I would bet next year someone's going to emerge as like the ecosystem for, because you see in a lot of trading use cases, ecosystems focusing on, like perps or specific things and Hyperliquid or certain
right.
ecosystems around those use cases. I bet we'll probably see some pivots into, maybe it'll be more of a pivot into that as the meta increases around that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There might be something there. And there's also this aspect of too, like prediction markets are creating information. And that's what I get most excited about. I'm not so much like the speculative gambling aspect is not that interesting, but the information created and like the pricing information in real time is useful. So I'm guessing like there could be potential like Oracle layers and like supporting different trading and hedging strategies as well. I could see that fitting into like a more like network specific type of solution. But yeah, something that's just been on my mind is like, okay, who's building the new prediction market technologies? What can I point them to like the networks we're working with, or know where they're doing that? Maybe we can work with them on the stablecoin side.
It's cool. Anything we did not cover today that you are excited about that you would want to leave a stablecoin focused listener with that we may have missed before we close?
Yeah, it's mostly just the emphasize, like we love working with new ecosystems and like, the partners, especially around like the Brale ecosystem as well. There's stables like MXNE, and if people are launching there, we're happy to support your growth. Like if you're using Brale and launching something there or thinking about doing it, we'd be happy to like show you our tool set, see how we can provide some liquidity, help out in some liquidity strategies, those type of things. So that's kind of just like, we're really open-minded to like where we can help people out. And also I think our capabilities this next year, we've hoped to really ramp things up and build the team, fundraise, do all those things to really add to our set of products and what we can accomplish.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Big year ahead. Jeff, thanks for the time. Go check out stablecoin.xyz, see what Jeff is building with SBC. Man, thanks for joining Stableminded. This was fun.